the measure phase is one of the most important phases in the methodology, and it's also likely to be one of the longest phases as well. For the DMAIC side of the integrated Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma program, in the define phase we said, here's what the problem is, here's the problem. In the measure phase, what we're trying to establish is, well, now that we know the problem, how bad is it? To what extent does it exist? And we use 3 high-level steps to execute that. So the first thing is validating the big why, the measurement system itself, and we usually do that through an MSA. There's some other tools here that we use as well, but in the end what we're trying to do is validate the big why measurement system. It's one thing to say we have a problem, but it's another to rely on the measurement system that's capturing that. The second thing we do is baseline the capabilities. So now that we know what the problem is, we know that we can measure it, that now we actually go and do the measurement itself, what we call the baseline capability, and we'll use some tools for that, primarily process capability, but if it's on the lean side of things, then it's usually some kind of a value stream map or some means of quantifying the amount of waste. And we'll see in the very next module that will show you how to quantify the waste in a given process. So that's the baseline. So again, we know what the problem is, we know we can reliably measure it, we know to what extent it exists, and then the last thing in the measure phase is we want to identify the opportunities for waste elimination or variation, and the deliverable is to list the potential key process input variables. So we know that the big why is not behaving the way we'd like it. What are the inputs that are potentially causing that? So that's on the DMAIC side. Now if we just go over to the DMADV side, similar sort of thing in the measure phase, although of course because it's DMADV it's slightly different. In this phase, we want to identify the functional requirements. So you remember in the define phase, we had a list of the CTS as the critical to satisfaction. Now we want to turn those into functional requirements. Now that we know the CTS, what the customer wants, it's now time to begin thinking, well, how does a solution have to behave? How does it have to function in order to meet that requirement? And we do that beginning in house of quality, or quality function deployment house number 2. And this will give us the FRs, or the functional requirements. We can then generate some design concepts, and we can use some tools here to help us design or come up with some potential design concepts. These are sort of back of the napkin preliminary thoughts on how to solve the problem or the need of the customer. And then still at a very high level, once we have a number of concepts perhaps selected, then we want to evaluate those. So we want to know from this phase, we want to know how does the solution have to function, what are the potential solutions that meet those requirements, and then a preliminary evaluation of how do each of these potential solutions stack up to one another. And so now you can see whether we're talking about DMAIC Lean or DMADV, there's a lot in the measure phase. So again, it is one of the most important phases of the methodology, and also one of the longest phases usually in the methodology, and you can see why. And that's the measure phase.